Good evening, Hall of Fame Dynasty members. It's been a while. It's been about 2 weeks since we had our last broadcast, and it's been a busy 2 weeks. I know you all know about the situation going on, so I appreciate all of your kind words, everything that you guys have done, the fact that I know you guys are checking up on me, and obviously you're keeping the league going. It's been a lot of fun. Bear with me tonight because I am kind of dealing with a cold. Obviously, we had negative degree highs last week, and now we're back up into the 40s and 50s. So it is causing us, a lot of people around this area, to develop little colds, but I'm getting over it fairly quickly, or trying to at least. So if I sound a bit different or stuffed up, you'll know why. I've got some tea here. So anyways, I want to welcome you guys in. We are going to be reviewing week 5 of the 2019 season, and I am labeling it by the week of the year that it is, not just the week of NHL, NBA, because that really doesn't make much sense, especially since I plan on doing this year round. It makes it a little bit easier to keep track of where we were, and I have the slides numbered for whichever week we are in each league. So that's what I'm looking at. I think you guys have figured it out by now, but this is week 5. We are reviewing of the 2019 season, and we're closing out on the NHL and NBA regular seasons at this point. We only have a few weeks left, and it's getting real tight. Both trade deadlines are passed, and it'll be interesting to see who takes the lead, who ends up winning those leagues, because of the fact that we've busted our butts. I mean, obviously, some of us went rebuild, some of us went for it all this year. There's different strategies for everyone, and look at what happened in football. Keith and I dominated the regular season, and it ended up going to Jared in the end, with Atlanta and Chris obviously taking second place. So as much as we all feel like, oh, it's kind of down the shitter, or I have no fucking chance, there's still plenty of time, and especially even in category leagues like NBA, it'll be fun to see where that goes. Now, I know I said I had a special announcement for tonight's show. I'll get to that here in a minute. And I'm checking actually our baseball Slack right now because of the fact that we obviously had the poll for what to do about free agency for the upcoming, as a rule, whether it should stay open, whether we should have it open for 1 month, etc. I am pulling it up here to check to see if Keith still hasn't voted. I want to make sure he has it correct. So, Keith, if you are watching this, please go and vote in the baseball Slack under #polls and get that vote in. You did comment in football. I just want to make sure we have the right understanding, so we're not continuing down a road of, especially once that way Sean and I can get our votes in and we can go from there. So we don't have any confusion 2 weeks down the road of, oh no, I meant this. And all of a sudden we have people claimed and we're moving backwards, so on and so forth. So Keith, if you could get that in, I'd greatly appreciate it. But anyways, let's get on with our show for tonight. I'm really excited. And so let's start with the special announcement as I pull this up here. I hope you guys have all had a good start to the year. I'm really excited to see what happens over these next few weeks. Obviously, you guys know where I'm at. It's going to be up and down. I've got the shows kind of created, and if somebody needs to take over, I can always share the link. I'd appreciate it if you guys would continue with it if you want. It's up to you based on schedule and everything else. So obviously, before I get too sidetracked, let's move on with the show here. So my big announcement, I know we were talking about Fantrax Premium and what we wanted to do. It made no sense for hockey or basketball, and I really don't think we need it much there. And we were talking about baseball, and with that, bring up obviously a very beautiful picture of baseball, and I'm very, very excited. Obviously, it's my home stadium, Chicago White Sox. I still call it Comiskey. It's still my favorite park. I'd love to visit the others, but anyways, baseball season's coming up. We are only a few days away from pitchers and catchers reporting. And with that, we've obviously been getting ready for baseball season ourselves with the Super Bowl over. And with the discussion of premium, I really didn't have any. We had about 4 or 5 reactions. Really, not everybody got in on it. A poll might have been better, but I will say that we will have Fantrax Premium for 2019 for our baseball season. I was able to get in contact with Fantrax. They were actually doing a promotion on Twitter. They were trying to get premium out there for different leagues for people converting, or even just the fact of, hey, if you've been with us, let us know, drop your link here. So I put our link up. They ended up getting back to me, and they did grant us Fantrax Premium for the 2019 baseball season. So we have that. It's all paid for. No need to worry about that for this year. I want you guys to see just how nice Fantrax Premium is for us, at least. Baseball is probably the biggest one due to the fact that we have the rule for 130 at-bats or 50 innings pitched for rookies. It makes it a lot easier. I mean, especially with us going back and forth in other leagues, and obviously NHL isn't always busy. Sometimes you have 2 players to put in or whatnot. It's a 26 game rule for hockey. NBA, we don't have minors. NFL, we don't have minors, and those are pretty easy to monitor. But for us, really, I mean, getting premium is stellar. One, it keeps everyone on the same wavelength, everybody on the same level playing field, and it gets us to be able to, obviously you can't say, oh, he's been holding, say, Michael Pineda on the DL for the last 10 days and he hasn't moved him off. And yes, Keith, Kevin, that was the announcement. Is that a problem? And so anyways, that is the announcement I had for today. We do have Fantrax Premium for 2019. And I hope you guys enjoy it. I think it'll be real nice. I'm going to play around with the settings tonight, see what else we can add in there as well, because I know not only can we enforce disabled list and minor league rules, there are a few other things as well. And so I'm really excited for it. And with that, Sean did also get Fantrax Premium for the contract league that we were talking about, whether we do 10, 12, 14 teams. I think we were looking at either 12 or 16. We are doing the contract league. If you guys are interested, let Sean or myself know. And we do have Fantrax Premium for that. It'll allow us to do the contracts very easily, not just for us as commissioners, but yourselves as owners as well. So hit us up. We're hoping to get that started. We would like to get the draft done, relatively soon. I don't think we're going as deep as the 30-team league that we did just recently with, I believe, 50 or 60 rounds, but it would be a lot of fun to get all you guys in there. Obviously, it gives us 2 baseball leagues, since not everybody's going to have the same ability to compete every season, and that way you have something to do, not just with one league. So hit us up. We want to create that contract league. Obviously, it's February 5th. We have some time, but let's get on it now. Let me know if you guys are interested. So that's everything I've got for baseball. I'm really excited, and I will, like I mentioned before, I will be doing team previews, going through what every team looks like, what I'm expecting out of them, where I think they'll finish, et cetera, et cetera. And from there, we do want to do division breakdowns and predictions. I'd love to get you guys on for that. And even if you guys want to join in on your team's preview, let me know and I will get you on easily. So moving on to hockey, obviously there was a lot more news since it's been 2 weeks since the review, but a lot of it was actually a fairly it was busy at the trade deadline. A lot of it came from Minnesota, obviously, and Mac doing his whole thing of his big fire sale that he decided to do at the end of the year. He ended up trading away Sean Couturier, Jose Saros, Eric Stahl, a bunch of other players. He ended up getting guys like Middlestad, and he's definitely preparing for 2019, 2020, that season coming up. I think he could be a very dangerous team going into next year. He's obviously got some growing to do, but I expect with Mac's knowledge of hockey, he hopefully has picked the right guys. And I think he's in the same position I was when it came to baseball season. He's got all the knowledge, and he kind of affected what's going to happen in the playoffs. obviously by moving guys like that. And Nashville Predators were one of the big teams trading with Minnesota in that timeline, which obviously they're a sneaky team. They had a very tough matchup with me that last week, so they're still in the contention. We'll get to that shortly. Vegas was able to tweak their lineup by adding Colin Miller, a guy that he had dealt earlier in the year, ended up getting him back for his defenseman depth. Very good acquisition there. I think Colin Miller is just what Vegas was looking for. They needed that next line defenseman. They didn't have a lot of depth there, so getting Colin Miller was a great acquisition. I myself, obviously, I was able to bring in Landeskog. That was a weird mess and day and everything else that went on. Obviously, not just hockey, but life. And I was surprised I was able to pull it off. So that was probably the biggest acquisition that got moved. Obviously, Couturier is huge. Guys like Eric Stahl, but they just weren't on the same level playing field this year. There haven't been very many pickups or drops. Obviously, I was able to get Nino Niederreiter from the Carolina Hurricanes. He's been hot recently, so I was able to claim him off waivers after Braden Point went on to the IR for a few days. Just very Kotkaniemi. That's such a tough one. Avalanche picked them up recently. I think it's a good pick. It may just be a stream. I don't know, but it's a good pickup for a centerman who's very young. He's a rookie, starting to find his groove. And not only that, Keith and his Avalanche were able to strengthen their minors by adding Christian Vesalainen. He obviously is going to remain in the minor leagues of the Winnipeg Jets for the rest of this year. He'll be back next year, but a very talented winger for a young Jets team that's looking to not only compete this year, but the next few. And they've got a very solid core, and I think Vesalainen is going to be one of those guys for the next few years that you can count on. So let's get into, obviously, the current playoff picture. This is what it looks like. Colorado was actually able to separate away from the Ducks again. From the Ducks after this past week. We all know what they were competing back and forth, and the Avalanche have been trying to gain some ground on the Ducks for the last month, 2 months, all season really. And because the Vegas Golden Knights were able to upset the Ducks this past week, it allowed the Avalanche to take the #1 seed back, and especially take the lead in the Ed Belfour division by a single game. I'm still expecting the Ducks to keep going at it. I don't expect them to be giving up anytime soon. We know Jared is a fighter, and he's been competing in every single league. He's had a hell of a year, and 2019's off for a good start for him. Yet Keith is still above him at 13-4. I hold the #2 seed at 12-5 after I believe 3-5 or 2-4 start, something like that. It's been a hell of a run. I'm hoping it doesn't end anytime soon, but thanks to some luck over the past month, I was able to get that 1-game lead over the Golden Knights and the Hurricanes. So we'll see how that plays out. And the biggest one here that doesn't reflect on our team page is the Hurricanes have the #4 seed over the Vegas Golden Knights right now, because they are split at 1-1 on the season against each other, as the Vegas Golden Knights were able to take the first matchup as they faced off earlier this year. They were able to take the first matchup. Carolina recently beat up on the Golden Knights a couple of weeks ago. So even though it's 1-1, it's based on score within those games, as we did for football as well. So Hurricanes hold the advantage by about, I think, 40 points over them right now. And as I kind of talk here, I'm pulling up the schedule to see if these two meet again, and I don't believe they do. Obviously, they faced twice this year, only so many weeks. The Vegas Golden Knights will close out the year with the Rangers, Predators, Lightning, Wild, and myself for the final week of Week 22. So Chris and his Golden Knights better get on it. They better hope they can keep pace with the Carolina Hurricanes. Obviously, they still they are a lock for a playoff spot at this point with their 11-6 record, but it just matters which seed, who they would end up facing. So right now, it would end up being the Carolina Hurricanes and Golden Knights facing off, and it looks like it's likely going to be that way for the playoffs. and the Ducks would likely draw the Nashville Predators, who are have the 6th seed at 8-9 after their losses last week. So let's get into that. We'll start with the biggest blowout from this week, which was the New York Rangers taking on the Colorado Avalanche. Obviously, traveling to Denver, not something that's particularly easy, and they showed that by losing by over 150 points. I apologize, I'm a little stuffed up here, but yeah, almost 150-point deficit for the New York Rangers in this week. I don't think anyone really expected anything different. The Rangers are obviously looking towards next year. Haven't been too focused on hockey all this year. We knew they weren't particularly interested in it from the draft. But I think they've got a good team. They just need some youth. But obviously, they were expected to lose in this matchup. Colorado Avalanche have been tough all year. So it brings the New York Rangers down to 4-13, and obviously pretty much a flip-flop of the record for Colorado to 13-4. And like I said before, they secured that not only the top seed, but that top spot in their division as well. And a lot of this came down to the offensive game, of course. I mean, you look at the difference here, 150 points more by skaters almost for the Colorado Avalanche. And the Rangers, here's the thing, the biggest thing that's been the problem with their roster all year is the amount of starts they're getting. They averaged close to 5 points per start. Obviously not the offensive performance that you would want out of them, with the fact that only 9 goals, barely 16 assists. And you're hoping that you can get double-digit goals every week, and maybe 20 assists is where you need to be. That seems to be our league's baseline. Is if you're expecting to win a week, you need to have at least double-digit goals, over 20 assists. That's something that we've seen consistently. The most positive thing to say about the Rangers, though, obviously they played a decently clean game with 24 penalty minutes. It didn't kill them, but it didn't help them either. The biggest thing that killed them is the 0 power play points that they were able to produce on this week, even with 48 starts. That's unheard of. The fact that you're obviously able to get on the power play, but this is the first week we've had a 0. So tough there. It's a big part of why they lost by 150 points. Pretty decent goalie play with 27.2 on the week. Casey DeSmith with 8.4, and Devin Dubnyk with 14 points, 2 wins on the week, which is excellent for him. Moving over to Colorado, it was absolute domination. Double-digit goals, just over 30 assists, almost as clean of a game with penalty minutes, and 15 power play points. Excellent. No hat tricks this week. Nothing too stellar. Really, all of it came down to the goals and the assists. Everything else was fairly close. Blocks was a good 21-point advantage for the Avalanche this week. But it came down to setting up for goals and actually finding the twine in the net. And that's what it came down to. And Colorado's been able to do that all year. And not only did they dominate on the scoreboard, but they will dominate with the 3 stars of the week, with right winger David Pastrnak at 33.7, Brent Burns as a defenseman with 32.5, and defenseman John Carlson 28.6. That move for Brent Burns earlier this year obviously was a great move. I remember trying to break that up. I wish I would have tried to a little bit harder, but it gives Colorado a huge advantage. Brent Burns is playing very, very well for the Sharks this year, and he's a big reason of why Colorado is in the spot they are in at this point of the year. So moving on to our next matchup, the Minnesota Wild are getting kind of lucky here at the end of the year with their matchups. Obviously, they had to face the Ducks, myself, the Avalanche, and the Golden Knights a lot earlier this season. It seemed to be almost every single week they were playing one of those 4, even with the fairly balanced schedule. It looks like their luck is starting to kick in now. They are 6-11 going after this matchup. They were able to beat the Lightning by just over 100 points, 105 to beat, 104.5. Great matchup for them. Obviously, they didn't cross the 300-point mark, which is a very good indicator of if you're going to win. But when you're facing the Lightning, they've had some struggles. They were able to move Landeskog for some good NFL pieces, as we see where their priorities lie. And So this moves Minnesota up to 6-11. Tampa drops to 2-15. And I'll be curious, this is a team to watch in the Minnesota Wild. With the Nashville Predators, and actually I'll get into that later. When we talk about the Nashville Predators, I'll talk about the Wild. So why don't we dig into the stats from this game, because there's not a whole lot to talk about. Tampa, or starting with Minnesota Wild, only 234.2 points from skaters. We know they had a fire sale. And even after the fire sale, that's a pretty good performance out of their team, considering they went youth. That's where they're looking. They want to keep building that franchise and build that core so they can compete for a long time. We know how hockey players are able to play for 15, 16, 17 years easy. And with the potential that's on their team, they could be scary next year. Doesn't help them this year, but obviously great performance. 4.8 points per start on 59 starts. And the fact that they were able to hit almost 300 points with only 8 goals on the week really shows what Minnesota can do if they're able to find that offensive stroke that they need to. 8 goals, 25 assists, and a really clean and really well-played week with only 14 penalty minutes. So that would have made them just short of that 300-point mark. With 14 penalty minutes does take away 14 points. They would have been sitting at 297. And the crazy thing is they had 8 goals, but they had more power play points than they did goals this past week. And obviously looking at what they did, 49.2 points from goalies. I think that's the best week we've had this year. Nobody has crossed that 50-point mark from what I can remember, but 49.2 points, hell of a week for their goalies. A lot of it came from Carter Hart, who had 23.8, Jose Saros, 12.4, and Andrei Vasilevsky, 12.8. It's a good, very, very good goalie setup that they have. I don't think goalies are as important as they may appear to be to the Wild, but it does give them a good baseline every week, so they know that the goalies aren't going to kill them. So that's the good thing for them. Moving over to Tampa, 167.3 points from skaters, just under 4 points per start, only 45 starts on the week. They were actually, with only 45 starts, they were able to generate a good amount of points, though, with 10 goals and 17 assists for a total of 27 points on the week. Obviously, you'd prefer that to be a little bit higher. Decently clean week with 23 penalty minutes, only 4 power play points and 11 points from goalies. And that's where they really struggled, was being able to take advantage of the power play and put it in the net when they needed to. This was actually fairly balanced for the most part when it comes to our 3 stars of the week. Defenseman Dougie Hamilton comes in as our 3rd star of the week with 26.3 points for Tampa Bay. So they did have a bright spot in Dougie. He's been a guy that was a big sleeper going into this year. I wish I could have grabbed him, but it was a good draft pick by the original owner. And obviously, centerman Eric Stahl and defenseman Jacob Trouba take our 2nd and 1st stars of the week, respectively, with 27.9 and 29.7 points for the Minnesota Wild. Moving on, this was one of the better, what I thought was going to be one of the better matchups of the week. You had Sean and his Carolina Hurricanes taking on the LA Kings and Chris. And I expected it to be much closer than it was, but it ended up a good matchup with the Carolina Hurricanes winning 330 to 274.3. A good 55-point difference. Really isn't that far off, but I really expected the Kings to put up a bit more of a fight. And with Carolina really being kind of quiet since earlier this year, I didn't expect this type of play out of them. But we'll get into who and why they're at this point after we get into the matchup. But with this very convincing win, the Carolina Hurricanes do move to 11-6, while the Kings fall to 6-11. Hard luck loss this week. There we go. Hard luck loss this week for the Kings and Barnes. I'd like to see him make the playoffs. I don't think it's going to happen. But obviously, he didn't have his team at the control of the year. I expect him, once he kind of gets a feel for every one of his teams, and once we get into baseball and football season, he'll be able to improve his hockey team how he sees fit. And he was one of the ones to make a move, I believe, 2 weeks before the trade deadline. So I expect him to be fairly active in the trade market as well. So digging into this matchup, it was actually fairly close. 312.2 points from skaters compared to 240.3. Only a half-point difference per start. And that's a good, obviously, 5-start difference. But the fact that you're only trailing by half a point shows that you're right there with them. Even though it says 55 points really difference in score really isn't that much. And it comes down to just the little things. You look at, obviously, the LA Kings just had kind of a hard luck week this week with only 12 goals, 17 assists for a combination of 29 points. Whereas the Hurricanes were able to find the net consistently, even if they weren't getting the assists. You obviously prefer the goals as they are worth more. But very good week for them. Neither team played a clean week. 27 and 32 penalty minutes for the Hurricanes and Kings, respectively. Both played very well on the power play. They were able to convert when given the chance. And that's something you always need to do. It's hard to win in real-life hockey and obviously fantasy hockey if you're not able to convert on the power play. That's when you have the advantage. You need to take advantage of it. The teams that we've seen winning weeks usually get the double digits, and this is what we're looking at here. So Carolina Hurricanes didn't have the goalie play, but like I talked before in the previous matchup, as long as they're not hurting you and going negative, you're all right. 34 points for LA, not enough to overcome the deficit, obviously, by 55 points. But our 3 stars of the week are some really big names. Obviously, our 3rd star of the week is left winger Alex Ovechkin with 33.9 points for the LA Kings. He was their outstanding performer. We know what Ovechkin's going to do. Every so often he'll have a cold week because he's not finding the back of the net. But even if he's not, he's setting up his teammates as well. So he's always going to be on this top 3 for the most part. Center and right wing Sebastian Aho for the Carolina Hurricanes put up 35.4. And center Mika Zibanejad with 38.5 points for Carolina as well. I've got to say, Aho's been the biggest surprise this year, and he's been very, very fun to watch. And I know Sean's excited to have him on the real-life Hurricanes and his own Carolina Hurricanes as well. So congrats on that pick. That was a hell of a steal in the draft. Moving on to my team and taking on Kevin and his Nashville Predators, this actually looked like it was going to go sideways for me from the start. Obviously, we had the NHL All-Star break in there. I was sitting there going into Thursday night, trailing by, I believe, 50, if I remember correctly. But there was a lot of time to think, a lot of time to just wait and see what my team was going to do, going Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I think there was only 2 games on Monday to return to regular play, and it didn't look good for me. I was able to actually make a comeback, and it just kind of barreled down and down and down for Kevin. His team kind of cooled down. It was the wrong time for the NHL All-Star break. I think had this been a 1-week matchup where it's a regular schedule, I think he would have had the advantage. But it seemed like my team was able to turn it around, and I was able to win by just over 40 points, 41 points to be exact. So hell of a week by Kevin. I'll give you props, man. It was – I really was sweating going into the NHL All-Star break. I didn't think I was going to be able to pull it out. I was having flashbacks to the beginning of the season where my team just goes cold, and all of a sudden the team I'm playing is super hot, just playing very, very well. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, unfortunately for you at least. So it was a 41-point win. That does bump me up to 12-5. Kevin falls back below that 500 mark again at 8-9. And I expect him to be able to bounce back going to this week, but we'll talk about that with the preview. Let's dig into this one. And I didn't do the points per start. So I realized I didn't update this one when I was working on it today. I did have a 311 points out of my skaters this week. Very good week. As cold as they started, it wasn't great. Let me actually do some quick math here on the fly just so we can see. 338.4 on 64 starts. Put me at 5.29 points per start, and the Nashville Predators on 60 starts were able to put up 4.95. So about half-point difference, kind of like we saw with the Carolina Hurricanes and LA Kings. Very similar point spread there with half a point difference. I was able to find the back of the net and set up my other players as well with 18 goals, 31 assists. The 31 assists I'm very happy to see. Obviously, I would prefer the goals, but assists are usually more consistent, a little bit easier to get by. I wasn't happy to see my Blackhawks put up 35 penalty minutes. And looking at that, I'm actually curious where that came from. Let's see. I know a lot of it came from not DeBrincat. Let's see. Who had all the penalty minutes for me this week? Oh, boy. It looked like just Steven Stamkos with 5, Mark Giordano with 8, Roman Josi with 6. It was a little bit of everyone. It seemed everybody was a bit aggressive. Obviously, they wanted to come out hot. They were kind of mad with their cold start for my week, so I'm glad to see they were able to pick it up offensively and make up for those 35 missing points. But other than that, 14 power play points, about average, a little bit above, I think, for our league, and then 27.4 points from goalies. I will apologize if there's a lot of rumbling. We are getting thunderstorms through the area, so if it breaks down, I apologize, and I'll pick it back up when I get the chance. Just warning you guys. So moving to Nashville, 266.8 points from skaters. Almost that 300-point mark you want to hit, but very good week. 15 goals, only 3 less than mine, 5 assists, and the part that hurt them was the 51 penalty minutes. Even if they cut it down to 30, they're right there with me with maybe 20 points, and you're hoping that you can find an assist here, a goal there. But they were able to match me with 14 power play points. Excellent week, Kevin. You played right there with my team the whole time, and your goalies actually performed way better than mine. Guys like Jimmy Howard with 14, and Pekka Rinne actually had a very good week with 1 win, 4 goals allowed, and 58 saves. It's not bad. Not that Pekka Rinne we're used to, but obviously he's kind of getting back where you'd prefer him to be. And hell of a week, Kevin. You really had me sweating. I thought you were going to take me this week and be able to get that 9-8 record you've been searching for. My team was able to dominate the 3 stars of the week. Centerman Ryan O'Reilly with 26.7, left winger Alex DeBrincat with 26.7, and defenseman Chris Letang with 33.9. Really happy to see that. DeBrincat's been one of my favorites to watch. He's been a sniper this year, playing well with Patrick Kane. And Kevin, you were right there. You had a lot of guys, 19, 15, 17. Just no one really jumped out. I mean, Anza Kopitar really tried getting his revenge on me with 24.7. Obviously, Chris Letang kind of dished it back to you with 33.9. So I'm looking forward to our matchup in the playoffs if you're able to get there. And for our final matchup of the week, Jared and his Anaheim Mighty Ducks took on Chris's Vegas Golden Knights. And I don't remember my prediction, but I thought the Ducks were going to come out with this one. Unfortunately, it wasn't the case, as they dropped this one, 28-point difference between the two. And I'm excited for you guys to see really the closeness of this. And I know Chris was hitting me up in the DMs later in the week. He was sweating, Jared. So don't think he had an easy time closing out the week. He thought he was going to lose it near the end of the week. And you made a hell of a comeback considering how far you were down. Unfortunately, the Ducks do drop to 12-5, that 1 game behind the Colorado Avalanche, as I discussed earlier, while the Vegas Golden Knights jump up to 11-6, and they keep that 1 game pace behind the Chicago Blackhawks. Really close matchup here. I mean, it's 40-point difference in skaters, not even half a point difference per start, and only 1 start different. 1 goal less for the Ducks with 18 versus the Golden Knights 19. 8 assist difference is really where this matchup came down to it, because 8 assists at 3 points each, 24 points. And it really was a lot of small, ticky shit here. I mean, the fact that 1 goal, 8 assists, and the 7 different penalty minutes between the Golden Knights with 22 and the Ducks with 29, it really wasn't much. And I think if these 2 teams match up in the playoffs, it's going to be a very excellent matchup, and it's going to be fun. I think the Ducks could end up knocking them off, and we'll have to wait and see with that one, as I'm going to pull up the standings because I know these 2 faced off earlier this year. Let's see, results. And with that, I was surprised to see the Golden Knights pull off another 400-point week. It didn't look like they were going to, but they were able to pull it off down the stretch. So the Golden Knights faced off against the Ducks. in week 8, and they actually lost that one by just under 80 points. So if these two teams do end up with a tied record, it's going to come down to this one, because the Golden Knights finish off their year with, let's see, obviously they're playing the Rangers, the Preds, the Lightning, the Wild, and myself. So they will need to try and figure out a way to not tie with the Ducks, because the Ducks will have the advantage due to the point differential. Oh, as I go back. Obviously, it was a very balanced scoreboard between these two. Joe Pavelski as our third star of the week at center with 34.9 for the Vegas Golden Knights. And 2 right wingers for the Ducks took the top honors with our second and top star of the week for this matchup, with right winger TJ Oshie with 35.4 and Thomas Hertl with 38 points. Even though the Ducks were able to take the individual awards home this week, it did not result in a team award, unfortunately. So moving on to week 17, and that should be week 18, I actually believe. It didn't save when I changed it earlier, but week 18 matchups. We'll start with this one. Tampa Bay Lightning taking on the Chicago Blackhawks. I think we all know the way this one will go. I'm going to pick myself for this one. It's the way, obviously, we look at where these two teams stand. The Lightning do have a 22-point lead on me right now, thanks to Andreas Johnson for the Maple Leafs, putting up almost 20 points in the first night. But I am making my way back. I am climbing out of the hole. I trail by 22 at this point. I'm hoping to get out of that hole fairly quickly so I don't have to worry as the week goes on. The next matchup is one that I'm really looking forward to. The Hurricanes haven't been dominant all year. They've been kind of up and down. They've been inconsistent, but now they get to take on the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, who would come in as the favorite, and I'm going to stick with the favorite this week, as I will take the Ducks in this matchup. They've outperformed them just point-wise by at least 20 each of these past few weeks. I expect the Ducks to want to bounce back after a tough loss to the Golden Knights last week and shut down the Carolina Hurricanes. Right now, it's a fairly close matchup at 8-point difference. This next one, it's two tough teams in tough situations this year. Their team isn't performing the way they wanted to. Obviously, Mac and his Wild were able to handle their team from the start and do as they saw fit. And unfortunately, Barnes came in late. But I think his team is a fun one to watch. And as fun as they are to watch, I will end up taking the Minnesota Wild this week. There's just something about them real sneaky right now. I think they've got enough of a potential to blow up in a good way and take this win. So moving on to Kevin and his Nashville Predators versus Keith's Colorado Avalanche. Now, this one was tough for me. I actually sat there for a while just because the Avalanche have been kind of up and down. I know they haven't been as explosive as they were earlier in this year, and the Preds have been coming into their own as of late, but I'm still going to take the Colorado Avalanche. I don't see the Preds being able to perform offensively just like the Colorado Avalanche are able to do with Nathan McKinnon and I can't remember the actual other winger. I can't remember the winger for the Avalanche right now, but they've been playing well, and Keith obviously knows what he's doing. He's been in the championship or in the playoffs each of the last 2 sports, so I expect him to be able to continue his run, and as he does need to hold off the Anaheim Mighty Ducks and Jared at this point. And this last one, easiest pick of the week, Vegas Golden Knights versus New York Rangers. Vic just doesn't have the talent in hockey, trading away Connor McDavid at the draft, and with the way that the Vegas Golden Knights were kind of able to tweak their lineup with Colin Miller before the trade deadline, I think it's going to be a huge step forward for them. So I've got the Vegas Golden Knights taking this week, and a lot of it is, obviously, it's the favorites, and that's who I'm going to stick with at this point. We're this late in the year, we kind of know who everyone is, whether they're a pretender or a contender. So moving on to basketball and the hardwood, slapping that wood back over the hockey rink. League news for Week 16 I really don't have much. The NBA trade deadline has officially passed. It was fairly quiet. The only 2 trades were between my Dallas Mavericks and Chris's Atlanta Hawks, and a lot of that came down to Wesley Matthews, Noah Vonleh, and the Knicks' second-round picks going to the Atlanta Hawks, giving the Atlanta Hawks a couple of good shooters, a lot more rebounds in their future, and especially they're looking to compete in basketball. They're hoping they can take that championship. Chris has been talking a lot of shit when it comes to it, so we know his Hawks are getting ready. He's coaching them up as best he can. So that was about all. It really wasn't much. It seems like just because of basketball and the way that it is, it's kind of hard to trade, but I expect that to change once we kind of all figure out where we want to be. So first matchup of the week, biggest blowout. Kevin's New Orleans Pelicans taking on my Dallas Mavericks. He may not have beat me in hockey, but he did dominate me in basketball as he was able to win 8-1-0 versus 1-8-0. Obviously, he got his revenge within the same week, so that helps him, I'm sure. It's not where he'd like to be, but it's still better than losing both weeks. Congrats, Kevin. That does bring you up to 79-65-0. My Mavericks fall to 44-100-0, but I am excited to see that I kind of called the future. Just the fact that obviously Kristaps was one of my picks in the draft. I think it was 5th round or maybe a little bit earlier than that. I was able to stash him away. I knew I wanted to kind of do a rebuild this year. I didn't know 100% what I was doing or what was going to be needed. So Kristaps Porzingis obviously got traded from the New York Knicks down to Dallas, and him and Luka Doncic are going to be a very, very fun combination for a long time down there, or hopefully for a long time. When Kristaps comes back next year, he should be fully healthy, and that's going to be a deadly combination. Looking at it, I didn't have the starts. I was kind of running around between the hospital and hospice, and it was a very busy week last week, so I wasn't able to get the starts in there, I'll fully admit. The only one I won was turnovers due to lack of starts. Obviously, under 300 points scored for myself. Terrible free throw percentage. I don't know what my team was doing this last week with only a 680, but the Pelicans played really well. And had they played pretty much anyone else, they would have most likely won at least 5 categories, if not 6. You look at their percentages with a 468, 87 three-pointers, I believe was the high on the week, because three-pointers just seemed to be really down as I made the show, as I looked through all the scores. They were a lot lower than previous weeks. So Pelicans with – actually, I wonder if I can look that up with all teams. Let's see. So moving to last week, and this is actually a really good tool. The New Orleans Pelicans did have the highest number of three-pointers on the week. They were one of the highest free throw percentage teams. They were middle of the pack when it came to rebounds, assists, really up there with steals with 42, and 20 blocks was in that top half, right where they need to be. And 729 points scored was, let's see, it's 4th on the week, actually behind the New York Knicks somehow. But obviously, very good week for the Pelicans. They would have been able to compete with anyone else had they faced them, but they were able to get 8 wins off of this matchup, which is great for them. Point guard Steph Curry was obviously their MVP. He put up a great week. Sorry, I'm a little unprepared for this basketball, and I'm just fighting this cold. But obviously, great week for them. And mine was Rondé Hollis Jefferson. That goes to show you just how bad my week was, because RHJ has not been the same guy on the court this year as I expected him to be. I really thought he was going to take a step forward, but he is young enough to where he maybe takes a step forward next year. I'm going to gamble on that, and I hope he maybe improves, and if not, it's a bust. Oh, well, he can be a role player for my team. But anyways, let's move on to the next matchup. Los Angeles Lakers took on the Chicago Bulls. Everyone knows the Bulls. Everyone knows that they've been coasting since Jordan. They haven't done shit in real life. They are an absolute garbage team, and the Lakers obviously are looking to rebuild in real life. They're looking to compete as they got LeBron this last year, and Barnes, I think, is doing a very good job of showing just how well the real-life Lakers can compete, and his can compete. He seems to be modeling his team after theirs, as they were able to win this week 7-2-0 over the Bulls with only 2 wins in the categories. So obviously Lakers and are reflecting real life and fantasy. Very good track for them both. The Bulls fall another week, and it's very tough for them. I don't know what they can do, but this does put the Lakers at 81-62-1, and the Bulls fall to 66-75-3. they have their own picks, I believe. They haven't done much trading, so hopefully the Bulls are able to get one of those top picks. If that's what they're looking for. So let's dig into this matchup. If you really look at it, it wasn't all too close when it comes down to it. Field goal percentage, almost 0.04 of a point difference, 17 three-pointers. The Bulls played a pretty decent week, as they were only 20 behind in assists, 8 in steals. But then you look, they were double digits less in blocks. They were able to keep their turnover rate pretty low at 52, but they lost by 200 points scored. And that was their biggest issue, was the fact that obviously they weren't able to get the rebounds. They were able to do a little bit on the defensive side with steals and blocks, steals and assists at least. But other than that, it was a pretty poor week for them. I will say an 840 free throw percentage was very good, though, and that's what you kind of want to look for, is over that 800 mark, because a lot of the competing teams seem to have tossed away the free throw percentage, and you'll see it when we move into some of the later ones. Both teams had team MVPs that were big men here, with centerman Marc Gasol taking home the honors for the center Marc Gasol and center Nikola Jokic. Chicago Bulls actually have a really good player in Jokic, and I'm excited to see what he can build on next year. Jokic was able to put up 88 points with close to a 550 field goal percentage, 47 rebounds and 32 assists. So he accounted for a lot of the team's performance there. And for the LA Lakers, when it comes to Marc Gasol, who is unfortunately hurt now, he shot close to 500%, 31 rebounds, 17 assists, only 10 turnovers, which is pretty good for a big guy like that, and then 79 points on the week. So not the most stellar of offensive weeks for the Lakers, but they were able to get the job done on the defensive side of the ball with 41 steals and 37 blocks. Moving on to one of the least looked at matchups of the week, with the Denver Nuggets hosting the New York Knicks. Vic has been getting his lineup set, so it works in his favor, as he is looking to compete in basketball with his good team. But it didn't work out in his favor. We know what the Denver Nuggets are, and as I will say, exact quote from the owner of the Denver Nuggets in Keith of, "I'm tearing down that wall, Jared. Here I come." Obviously, Denver Nuggets are looking to catch up with the Raptors, who have been dominant all year. I'm excited to see what they can do. They're a very good team, and they're built to possibly win this year. And the biggest person that stands in their way is Jared and his Toronto Raptors, as they both have competed against each other this year. So that does bring the Knicks down to 60, 83-1, and the Nuggets fall to 92, 52-0. So moving into this one, I was very surprised that the Knicks were able to take the three-pointers category. They were able to take assists, and they were very competitive in every other single category. I mean, you look at the fact, they lost by 50, almost 0.05 of a field goal percentage. They were able to compete in three-pointers. They were right there with free throw percentage. And the biggest thing they really trailed on in this matchup was blocks. But if they're able to keep the turnovers down for 1 week and maybe score a few more points, they're going to be right there with them in the playoffs. And I really think the Knicks, as long as they have their lineup set every day, they're going to be very, very competitive. And just because we know what Vic and his Knicks were able to build. They wanted to win the NBA. They wanted to take it. And I'm expecting something big out of them. I didn't expect them to lose 2-7-0 this week. But their team MVP was point guard D'Angelo Russell, as he was able to put up he actually outperformed Russell Westbrook, but D'Angelo Russell with over triple digits in points with 103, shooting almost 450 from the floor with double-digit three-pointers and double-digit in rebounds and assists. So I'm actually going to call that, I'll probably rule that a triple-double for our sake. I'm probably going to come up with something, unless you guys know something. Obviously, might know more than me for when it comes to basketball, but I would like to find something a little bit easier. But obviously, very good week for the Knicks, even though the scoreboard doesn't show it. They were right there with everything. And with the Denver Nuggets, Bojan Bogdanovic was their best player this week, which was a surprising name to see. Shooting guard out of Indiana, who shot 500 on the week with almost double-digit threes and 79 points. Not a whole lot else throughout the week when it comes to the stat sheet, but Bogdanovich was a big reason that they were able to put up the 800 points. So it is what it is. And for our final matchup of the week here, we get to two teams that obviously everybody's watching. They're in the top performers here. And we had the Atlanta Hawks and Toronto Raptors. I thought the Hawks were going to take it, but even though they didn't get a winning week, they were able to help the league and also help not just the league, but help specifically guys like the Lakers. They were able to help themselves, and they were able to help the Denver Nuggets as they lost 4-5-0 compared to 5-4-0 for the Raptors. Very limited distance between these two, and that does bring the Hawks to 81-61-2. And the Raptors are 105-39-0. So they are the first team to get 100 wins on the year. Obviously, cross that 100-point threshold. They were at 100 wins last week. So congratulations, Jared, on that. You were the first team to hit 100 wins. And because the Hawks didn't drop another category, they do hold the #1 spot in their division at this point because of the one less loss and one more tie over the LA Lakers. The LA Lakers have 62 losses and one tie. So the Hawks currently have this very, very slight advantage thanks to a decent week this week, even though they lost it overall. This was another very good matchup. And this just goes to show why the Raptors are in the position they're in. Shot over 500 from the floor, consistently with over 73 pointers, whereas the Hawks had a lot less field goal percentage, but they were able to put up similar threes. They were able to make it from beyond the arc, which is great. Much better free throw percentage, which will help them in the playoffs, since we saw that the Nuggets and the Raptors have kind of punted that one. They both sat below 780. So I'm expecting the Hawks to be able to hold their own when it comes to any of these top teams due to that free throw percentage and the three-pointers that they're always going to be there with. The Hawks trailed by about 50 rebounds, big difference there, but they were able to do what they needed to do with assists, able to set everyone up. 41 blocks, and which they were able to keep up almost in terms of scoring while also limiting the turnovers. They had 81 compared to the Raptors' 95. Point guard Trae Young was actually the team MVP for the Atlanta Hawks, so I'm sure Chris is loving having that. And he had a hell of a week. As I pull up the matchup here, Trae Young was the recent acquisition by the Hawks, and he was able to put up, let's see, obviously going to be near the top. Trae Young was able to shoot for almost 500% on the week with 15 threes, just under 800 free throw percentage, but 104 points with 33 assists. So excellent week for him. And with his 800 points scored by the Toronto Raptors, a lot of that came from Paul George on the week as a small forward, is where he had him playing, shot over 500% on the week with 17 three-pointers and 117 points. So outperformed Trae Young in all categories, and that's a lot of where it came down to. But obviously Raptors still hold their #1 spot. They have the #1 seed. Oh, wait, we do have one last matchup, and I totally spaced on this. Obviously, cold's getting to my head. You can see that. So we'll move on with this one. But the Timberwolves, it's been a hell of a year for Minnesota. It's been a weird year with Mac. I know you know it, the fact that you were able to make the baseball playoffs without knowing a whole lot. You made the NFL playoffs with a team that was hurt by injuries, but you also did a fire sale. So I'm wondering if you're going to be able to pull off the same thing with NHL. I mean, you're right there. You just need a few more wins. But with your loss this week, it was surprising as the Charlotte Hornets were able to win 5-4-0 versus the Timberwolves 4-5-0. And the reason I kind of had that little rant on playoffs is the Timberwolves sit at 67-76-1. This doesn't put them very far behind, or actually it puts them just ahead of the Chicago Bulls for that #6 seed, and we'll get to that here in a minute when it comes to playoff spots, as I have that coming up. But surprisingly, the Charlotte Hornets were able to win, and Mac did point it out himself, but I will point it out also, he has a lot of injuries. He is decimated right now, as he had 8 going into this week, and now he's up to 10 injuries on the week. So very, very brutal performance for him. Unfortunately, when you can't field the team, it's hard to win, especially counting stats like this. So a lot of it, though, came down to a very, very close matchup if you look at it. A lot of categories were separated by 2 or 10. And, neither team played really, really well. For a score that was 4-5-0 to 5-4-0, you would have thought it would have been a fun matchup, very competitive, but neither team shot above 470. Neither made more than 43 pointers, separated by 0.02 of a point for free throw percentage. And when it came to team play, neither really did well. But I will say the Minnesota Timberwolves did have their team MVP was Brandon Ingram, which he may not be a Los Angeles Laker this time by March because of the fact that the Lakers are trying to ship him off. So, but he did play very, very well for the Timberwolves, so he will remain there. He shot 600 from the floor, over 900 from the free throw line, 75 points. Not anything stellar, but he did account for about 1/5 of the team's points for the Timberwolves here. Power forward John Collins was the stellar performer of the week for the Charlotte Hornets, as I will pull him up here. Collins. Let's see. John Collins shot for over 540%, 90 points on the week as a power forward, 33 rebounds. That was about it, but he did limit his turnovers to only 10. So able to put up 90 points and only 10 turnovers, it's really, really good. So here's the current playoff picture. Toronto Raptors at number 1. The Atlanta Hawks, like I said, have that number 2 seed by pretty much half a game at this point. 1 loss and 1 tie. So I'm expecting that to bounce between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Hawks a lot over the next few weeks. So both of you, Chris, be on your lineups because it's going to be important every single win at this point in the season. Number 3 belongs to Keith and his Denver Nuggets. Only reason he's at number 3 is due to the fact that obviously he's second in his division while Chris is first in his. Barnes is obviously second, and Kevin and his New Orleans Pelicans sit at the number 5 seed. And I'm actually really excited if it sits like this. If the playoffs were to start today, that 4 and 5 game would be really fun to watch between the Lakers and the Pelicans. And Kevin's done a hell of a job of compiling the basketball team that he has. So I think he's going to be my sleeper going into the playoffs of potentially winning it all. And number 6, like I said, the Minnesota Timberwolves are sitting on that lead by about a game as well, just over the Chicago Bulls, as they have 1 more win and 2 less ties. So about 2 games back, we'll say. So Minnesota Timberwolves, obviously, good job. Moving on to Week 17 matchups for NBA. My Dallas Mavericks taking on the New York Knicks. My team hasn't been performing very well, and I think I forgot the first 2 days of the week, so I'm kind of behind on that. Obviously, it's already Tuesday. A lot of it is counting categories like we talked about. I know I'm far behind. I'm not expecting a great week, so I'm going to give it to the Knicks. Charlotte Hornets taking on the New Orleans Pelicans. Kevin, like I said, hell of a basketball team. I think you're going to win this week over the Charlotte Hornets, who have been struggling, but we saw them sell off half their team to start the year. So no surprise there, as I'll take the Pelicans in this matchup. Atlanta Hawks taking on the Chicago Bulls. Another uninspiring matchup for me, at least. The Bulls have been trailing off while the Hawks have been catching fire recently, even with a loss this week. It was to the number 1 team. You can't blame them. They've played very, very well, and the acquisitions of Vonleh and Matthews should help them when it comes to three-pointers, and that's something they needed to compete with the Raptors and the Nuggets. So give me the Atlanta Hawks in a very easy matchup. Lakers and Timberwolves, like I said, Timberwolves are hurt. I'm giving it straight to the Lakers. There's not a lot to say about it. It's not worth dwelling on, but this is the one to watch, everyone. If you're not going to pay attention to any other game, you need to watch this one because it's the Toronto Raptors and the Denver Nuggets. Jared and Keith, this is one of the most fun matchups every year or every season that we've gone through so far. And with the way that the Nuggets have been confident in their team, the Raptors have been kind of falling behind where they were on pace originally. The Nuggets are primed and ready to take them down this week, to try and dominate them, to try and gain as many games as they can, because this is how they're going to make their dough. This is how they're going to get that division championship they want, and they need to take advantage of it here. And for that reason, I originally was going to go with the Raptors, but I'm taking the Nuggets. I just think they have something going for them. So give me the Denver Nuggets. I think they're going to win this one. It may be 5-4-0, may only be 5 wins, but how surprising would it be for them to take 6 categories? I don't think it's that far off. So give me Keith and his Denver Nuggets. And that's all I've got for this week. I'm going to go get some rest. I'm going to try and get better. I hope you guys enjoyed. And like I said, I'm really looking forward to having premium for baseball this year. I want you guys to see how nice it is, at least for baseball, because of the fact we've got such large minors. It's an everyday full lineup, so it helps with everyone. It keeps everyone honest. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. I will talk to you throughout the week, and I really hope we get some really good matchups. We are only a few weeks away from playoffs, so keep that in mind, and we will update this every single week when it comes to playoffs and keep everyone informed, because there are some very close matchups in every single sport. So obviously pitchers and catchers report soon. I'm excited. I'm going to go get some rest. You guys have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful time. I will talk to you later. This is your Commissioner John signing out for the week.